This is Jackie Caruso. She has Devinwood Collies. Jackie, when did you get into collies?
Oh, about 20 plus years ago.
Okay. And how many dogs do you currently house?
We keep 15 to 16 dogs.
And how many litters a year?
2 usually, sometimes none.
When you first became seriously interested in collies, what dogs or kennels helped form your perception of the ideal collie?
Well, in the beginning, it was the Twin Creeks Collies. I would go to the Nationals, and for several years, it was Chicago, Atlanta, I believe, and it was always the Twin Creeks Collies that stood out to me. It was the detailed heads and their body balance and type, and then later on the Twin Oaks dogs. But the one that really stood out in my mind was Collie Club of Connecticut, Herb Searle judging, you were handling, champion Pebblebrook Twin Creeks Affair, standing out in the middle of the ring. And I looked at her standing there, and she was, to me, everything a collie bitch should ever be.
And what is that?
She had beautiful balance. She just had beautiful balance and elegance, and she was soft and beautiful. And she screamed collie.
Okay, what about in males?
Well,
Any that come to mind?
Well, in the very early days, before I really even thought that I really wanted, when I was just observing really, I do remember Champion Shaman Stormalong. I remember Peg Vore showing him, and it was the handler and the dog, they were like one, and the way that dog would look at her, the expression he had, just the way he would look at her, it was just, he was so beautiful and so much a collie. And that was one male that really, in the very beginning, stood out to me. Not that I was necessarily interested in that family of dogs, because it really always, for me, I could go to the Nationals and I'd look at a dog and then I'd look in the catalog and it was either sired by Postscript or it was sired by Joker. Those were the ones. But that dog in particular I thought was a very masculine dog, and he just had it was just the relationship between him and the handler that's so much collie temperament to me.
Okay, thanks. So now, which dogs are you comfortable working with? Which family?
Well, it's the Parader dogs through Twin Creeks and Twin Oaks. I mean, basically that's what I work with. I come from a background of line breeding. I mean, that was sort of drilled into my head, line breeding. But unlike Sue and Carol and Joyce and Mary B., who had they had similar but different dogs to work with, very similar family lines. I always say, I am a stranger in a strange land. I have a family of dogs that virtually does not exist very much where I am in our area, or really doesn't exist much anymore. So it's a matter of always striving to look to another dog to breed to retain the virtues that I think are really important, but to build a complete picture.
So what are the key dogs that you've been working with?
Well, I've worked within my own family of dogs because I did some breedings early on when we had Champion Twin Oaks High Plains Drifter, and I had purchased 2 bitches from Mary Benjamin from slightly different backgrounds. One was more the Twin Oaks through Cloud Dawn Grandeur Promise and Postscript, and then on the other bitch had some Venecy behind her. So they are similar but a little different. And so I had my own stud dogs that I've worked with. I leased a bitch of a different family to breed to that dog. And recently I bred to the Marnus dog because he goes back to Cloud Dawn Grandeur Promise, and he has the head virtues that are very important. And I have recently done, I have to admit, I have fear of outcross. I have fear of outcross. I'm very used to working with. It's very predictable, and it's what appeals to me. It's what I think a collie is. But I know that there are things that you have to build, and you have to go places, and because I don't have that many places to go. And I don't want to go someplace that will do me harm. So I feel that there are some dogs that can give me some of the things I want, but they can do me harm. Eyesight in particular is one of the things that scares me these days. So I have just done, and you know, we don't know what the result of this is yet, but I have done a major outcross for me. And so ask me again in 5 years, and I'll let you know how it worked out.
Okay. High Plains Drifter. Tell us a little bit about that dog. His pedigree. Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, I through unfortunate circumstances of Mary Benjamin's husband passing away, I was able to acquire Champion Twin Oaks High Plains Drifter. Drifter was an inbred, he was inbred on Cloud Dome Grandeur Promise, and who went back to postscript. So Drifter is 6 times Joker and 5 times, and so then he's 30 times Grit through postscript. So, I mean, I'm really dealing with, you know, a very inbred dog through Lawman, Cloud Dome Grandeur Promise, Joker, postscript, and Grit.
So Joker, would you 3 agree that he's one of the prominent stud dogs that's come down in the Twin Creeks family?
Yes. Oh, sure. Yes.
Both of his parents were from executive.
Right.
Right. So both those executive table stakes and Twin Oaks Executive Fair were both postscript. You know, they were both sired by postscript, and then
Out of Grit Daughters.
out of Grit Daughters.
Yeah. So, what was it about Joker that was of interest to you in terms of incorporating him? You're not the only one. I think he sired how many champions?
Over 60.
Somewhere around there. What was it about that dog? Where did he excel?
Joker. Well, it definitely was his head, his back skull. Mary tells me that, you know, you could predict when you bred to him, and, you know, she said it was very predictable. He would always improve back skull. And there's a famous picture of him. You see him in profile, and he has like this back skull that's just straight and level. He was a little higher on the legs, say, than Lawman. He maybe, you know, he had decent outline, but it really was the head detail. And he had wonderful temperament. I mean, I remember going to Mary's house, and she kept him, he was in a kennel in the garage attached to the house, and when she would do kennel chores, she would let him out. And the little puppies would be hanging off him and whatever, and he just tolerated everything. He had such wonderful collie temperament, you know, but he really excelled in head, you know, in his skull and his head profile. And he produced it, and I think that's why he was, you know, he sired as many champions as he did, and, you know, he was such a popular stud dog.
What about Lawman? How would you compare them?
The difference to Lawman also had a beautiful head, but Lawman had different body type. He was lower to the ground, a little curvier, a little bit more neck, shorter hocks, and he improved the body on the dogs. He definitely improved the body in that family of dogs, and the body type got a little different, a little lower to the ground, you know, a different body type.
He was softer.
Softer, yeah. Pretty eye. He was normal-eyed, so his eye was a little fuller, but there was something softer about him. And the body lines. He softened the body lines.
So let's go back to Drifter then. Drifter won the stud dog class at the CCV.
1986 National, yeah.
1986.
23 stud dogs.
23 stud dogs. That's not too shabby. And what do you think his strengths were?
Well, he also had a beautiful skull. He had a very smooth, round muzzle that, you know, he was filled right to the eye. He had a soft expression. He also was a normal-eyed dog, so the eye was a little fuller, but he had beautiful eye set. He was elegant. He was lower stationed to the ground than some of the dogs of that family. He carried nice coat, neck, and again, he had just a wonderful temperament. He was, I mean, you have said this to me over the years, that there are certain dogs, you can't exactly say what it is about them that makes them special, but they have an aura, and the good ones have a light around them. He was like that. He knew he was, you know, he just did. He just carried himself that way. But he produced very well. He's a Register of Merit sire, and but he really excelled in, head detail and his face. Big, very smooth muzzle, which is what he produced too.
And at Reno, the National, he was, wasn't he the only male?
He was the only male dog to receive an award of merit. He was in the ring with Freeze Frame. They were the only 2 males considered at the end, and there were, I think, 11 bitches out there. And yes, it was a huge disappointment, but I get it, but it was very exciting to have that happen. To have him win the stud dog class and that award of merit, was really thrilling.
Okay.
Disappointing.
Would you share with us what the best advice was that you were ever given?
Well, like everybody else, I've heard, buy the best bitch you can find and, breed it to the best dog you can find. And John Giuliano years ago had said, go to the National, sit, watch, get a catalog, look at the dogs that appeal to you, and, see who's siring those dogs. And that was very good advice. But I also got some other very good advice from one of my early mentors, and it was practical advice. Joe Kohler gave me 3 pieces of advice. The first one was, never talk about anybody's dog ringside because you never know who's standing behind you. The second piece of advice was, always congratulate the winner. You can kick and scream all the way home, but in the car, but just be gracious and never break the major.
Okay.